na sam they ma futu sam kakre wa supreme yo kofi oh man ya woman oh man ya mama deni baby ako ta da ya waren wonsom wani pa asa de pa wo fio ye demo yembera ye ebe ya na amaya umano amaya mama adi wa ya no ya nyamita da nyamana renya wonsom wani pa so ya wana be demo yembera ye ebe ya na wonsom wani pa asa de pa wo fio ye demo yembera ye ebe ya na ama be ya na ama yo asite be ya na oh ama be ya na demo yembera ye ebe ya obra you arabo ama be ya na emina demo yembera ye ebe ya ese ama be ya na obra ya we sabe ya na ro ao ama be ya na demo yembera ye ebe ya demo ni ye ama be ya na obra ya we demo yembera ye ebe ya ama era yo ama be ya obra you arabo demo yembera ye ebe ya Sikanyu bredo wafa Zimpawa weyes na winya Yamishira Mamani payo zefua Enyanum Yafanya misonya Jumana nyami besrayen Obra eboya Emo yamuraye Ebe ya efi yanara Oma beye ya efi yanara Ejano mapofo Asite beye ya efi yanara Oma beye ya efi yanara Adije Emo yamuraye Ebe ya Yafa enyibe nkawa Oma beye ya efi yanara Yanaro Emo yamuraye Ebe ya Ese abrada ya efi yanaro Asite beye ya efi yanaro Oma beye ya efi yanara Emo yamuraye Ebe ya Yajobi yayazo efi yanaro Saheba wokara na washawa Ama ebe ya Wansa chibaya wadonga yana wansa yana Efi yanaro Ebe ajaja ebe Yamo yamberaye Ebe ya efi yanaro
News reported extensively for making a number of policy statements and key highlights from the NDC's yet to be launched 2020 manifesto. Today, TV XYZ and Wezo TV are privileged again to host John Mahama and bring you an update on the issues that have dominated the tour of the two regions. Yesterday, for example, he was virtually the subject of attack at MPP's 2020 manifesto launch, and one poster on Facebook put it, "Is the MPP launching a manifesto or launching John Mahama?" I will take his reaction to this and other attacks. We'll take a short break, and the start of the program will begin when we are back.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
Welcome back. It's a Sunday morning and we are coming to you live from the garden of Gateway Hotel here at Nkwanta in the OT region. I am Erica Hianyo and you are watching TV XYZ and Wizard TV on Facebook and YouTube and also on Ago TV. You can also follow this interview on all the social media handles of John Mahama. Your Excellency, John DRAMANI Mahama, good morning. And it's a privilege again, Wizard TV and TV XYZ. We've been following you around the country to engage you again this morning.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, Eric.
Well, if you have any questions, I invite you to send them via WhatsApp on 020-866-7000. Your Excellency, good morning again. I want to just engage our viewers a little. It's been a busy schedule. It started from Bato in the North Tong constituency with lots of unplanned stopovers as charged youth blocked roads and demanding that NDC leader speaks to them. Some engagements went as late as 1 a.m. because of the delays. In these cases, the people, including traditional leaders, in some cases, waited for hours. Sir, you were obviously witnessing some of these stopovers, and I remember at certain points, the security detail had to force their way through because we couldn't keep, especially traditional leaders and professional bodies, waiting that long. Were you overwhelmed with what we watched as we toured the two regions?
Well, overwhelmed is a rather strong word, but it encouraged me to see the reaction of the people, especially the young people. We had scheduled specific stops along the route, but word had spread that I was coming, and every community wanted to be a part of the visit. And so even the remotest villages, I mean, they brought out benches and blocked the path of the convoy and insisted that I speak to them before I pass. And so because of those delays, it's pushed back our arrival time at most of the venues. But I'm very happy. I want to thank the chiefs and people of the Volta region and the OT region for the patience and tolerance they had. There were cases where we arrived, hours late, but they sat and waited for us because they wanted us to hear what their concerns are. And they do have a lot of concerns, and I think that it's been a very good experience.
We'll be delving into that, and some of us had opportunity to engage them outside the platforms you spoke. And many of those who hijacked your convoy, for example, demanded that you speak to them. I listed Mefe, Angoga, Aflawo, Penny, Hohoi, Pando, Oti, Chantai, and many others. Those who had the opportunity to speak to you or come around you, you could feel the enthusiasm. I would want you to watch a brief video. There's a woman who seemed, I want to use the word advisedly, if you watched her reaction from those of us who sat in the car observing, she was almost possessed. I want you to watch her and take your reaction on that.
Our father, Mahama, that we are tired. Daddy, we beg him. He should try and come back. I want to sing to my language. He said, because of me, he will come back again. So I thank God, I will receive him.
Sing the song again. I don't know how you understood her, but for me, who speak the same language, the summary of it is that you made a promise that the public will look for you, and that you said you will come back, and that is what she feels. And you could see the emotional reaction, and especially when people wanted to join her, she wanted to own the music, and you could see the elbowing and the tapping here and there. Briefly on this.
Well, that's how passionate Ghanaians feel, and I admire her enthusiasm. In actual fact, I said posterity will be the judge. I'm sure that's what she was referring to. And with everything that you do in life, you know, posterity judges, except that in many cases you think that that judgment will come many decades after, you know, but it looks like in this case the judgment has come much earlier than one had thought. I mean, people have had the opportunity now to see, you know, what a comparison in terms of track record is, and I believe that they are reacting, you know, to that comparison. I mean, people are looking at the nature of their lives, the value of their lives, and what they're going through, and based on that, they are making their decisions. I saw this kind of passion and enthusiasm in people's faces, you know, wherever I went, and that was a natural reaction to what they're going through.
But for me, as a journalist and somebody who has followed political party activities in this country for a long time, I saw high expectations, I could read disappointment, and I could also see a tall order ahead of you if you win the 2020 elections. That, in summary, was captured in some of the people we spoke to, and I want us to listen to them and be specific on the demands, jobs and other things, and maybe we can continue from issue-based discussions on the lighter side we just witnessed from the woman who sang.
We are changing you. Yes. We don't care who you are. Yes. We are changing you. Yes. 2020.
Scenes on the streets of Hohoe as we entered. Actually, many of the places we went to, the reaction was the same. For the purpose of this conversation, we wanted you to listen to the youth. These were energized, angry young men and women, and they talked about jobs, they talked about projects, they talked about difficulties. Now, how do you factor these reactions, because the expectations are very high, into your campaign promises, perhaps your manifesto, and how you tailor them to meet their demands?
Eric, reactions like this must make every leader humble and sober, because they are expressions of disappointment with the system. And so it shouldn't necessarily make a person happy. The reaction is not against the person of Nana Addo, it's disappointment in leadership. And so take his name out. Our young people have expectations. We've been on this democratic experiment for a period of time, and they expect to see that there's a change in their lives. They expect to see, you know, a movement towards prosperity. They expect to see hope. They want to see jobs. They want to see that their circumstances are improving, and they're not seeing that. And so for me, it rather humbles me, because that could be me if I became president in the next 4 years and we do not move quickly to solve some of these problems. That name, Akufo-Addo, would not be the name being mentioned. It will be John Mahama again. So for me, it actually makes me think that we need to have a system shift and see how we can improve things faster for our people. Our population is growing. At independence, we're 6 million. Today, we're 30 million. We need more schools for the children to be able to go. We need more hospitals. We need to do the roads and all that. But we have a system that is not working for them. And so for me, that is where my focus is. It's not on just criticizing this government, suggesting ideas, looking to see what we can do to make the Ghanaian project work. That is what is most important. Unfortunately, most people in leadership don't get it. It's about just making promises to them. And often when you do that, then you raise expectations the more. And when you don't meet the expectations, then it shakes their confidence, not only in the leadership, but in the whole system. And that's the reaction you're seeing. People are dissatisfied, because after 28 years of democratic governance, after the kinds of debt public debt we've added, 100 and something billion, people expect to see much better, but unfortunately that is not the case.
Those issues specifically, because we obviously talk about the economy and issues that the MPP raised yesterday when they launched their manifesto, but many traditional authorities complained about projects that have been abandoned in their communities. For example, the Akachi Hospital, the Eastern Corridor Road, Community Day SHS, town roads, water supply system, electrification, and so on. These were genuine reactions from prominent paramount chiefs who openly spoke their minds. Now, these were projects you initiated. Some have been abandoned. Some have been initiated by the current government in different areas that you will inherit and move on with it. Now, taking into consideration these demands, which will obviously reflect when you go to other regions, don't you think there's going to be a huge challenge you are likely to face depending on how this government eventually hands over if you become president?
Indeed, that's the tragedy of our country, that we do not continue, what was left off by the previous government, especially in the transition between my administration and Nana Addo's administration. I think that in previous administrations, an effort has been made to keep, development going. And so I haven't seen a case where there's been such a sudden, directive to stop work while government audits projects. I mean, projects can be ongoing while you do an audit, and then you can make the adjustments where necessary. And so from Rawlings to Kufuor to Professor Mills to myself, there's never been a blanket, directive to stop. But unfortunately, this is what happened in 2017. Projects were suspended across board, and in many cases, they haven't restarted. We just came down the Eastern Corridor Road. It's in a bad shape. This was a project that was conceptualized by Professor Mills. At the time we left in 2016, there were contractors working on various segments of the road. All that work has stopped, and the road has deteriorated. The tragedy is that when you're working on things like roads, when you develop it to a certain stage, if you don't finish it, then what happens is it deteriorates. And when you come back to do it, it becomes even more expensive. For instance, when coming from Pasa down to Nkwanta, on the left side of the road, they had put what in road construction they call 040. That is that cement mix that you put before you put asphalt over the road. And it has been left since 2017. And you can see that the 040 has, deteriorated. And so eventually, if the contractor has to come back on the road, he'll have to take that off and, put a new mix to cover the road before he puts the asphalt. That is not my money. The money that was used to do that did not come from my pocket. It came from the pocket of the taxpayers. And so when you recklessly, abandon projects like that, then what you do is you waste the money of the taxpayers. That's the taxes that all of us pay. There are schools, there are electric poles, water systems. I mean, I've crisscrossed the country and you see them everywhere that have been abandoned. And I think that is the tragedy, of our development, that we start and stop. It's going to be a big challenge when I come back into office. And what I have suggested to do is that we'll start no new projects, in the first year. And what we'll do is we'll harness all the resources that are possible to continue and finish the projects that have been left abandoned like that. So in the first 3 months when I come into office, we're going to ask all districts to do an inventory of projects that have been abandoned and have come to a standstill. And based on that inventory, we'll do the first budget to include, providing resources to finish those projects. And after we've finished those projects, then we'll look at the other projects.
That sounds great, but as you spoke, this went through my mind, that somebody deliberately stops a project and we have to waste money to revive it again, as you spoke about. I remember in 2018, the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, toured the Volta region, and he engaged his roads minister, Amoakwatha, on the Eastern Corridor Road, and he actually confessed that they had gone into audit and they had found nothing wrong, and that the contractor was supposed to get onto the road within weeks. When I followed you on the road, I was disappointed, almost nothing happening. Should it go like that? Or some people must really be held accountable for such losses?
Indeed, I think that people should be held accountable because, especially in the road sector, there's something they call interest on delayed payments. Now, the certificates that were pending for payments in 2016 that were never paid accrue an interest on delayed payments. And in many cases, because it's taking this long, more than 3.5 years to pay some of these certificates, the interest of on delayed payments far exceeds the value of the certificate. Let me give you an example. Let's say a payment for 10 million was pending and it's not been paid for 3.5 years. It's likely that the interest on the delayed payment today will be about 30 million Ghana cedis. And so you're not only going to pay the 10 million, you're going to pay 40 million Ghana cedis because you did not pay the 10 million.
So now you could plus 30.
You could have used that 30 million to continue the project. But just that abrupt stoppage is causing more debts for this country. And I have told the contractors, I had a meeting with them, and I said, look, when we come, we're going to ask all of you to go back to work. We're going to see how we can clear your outstanding certificates. We will compartmentalize the interest on delayed payments and see how we can, defray them over a period of time so that we're able to smoothing out, the delivery of these projects. And it's not only in terms of roads, it's in terms of all the other projects that we've been doing. It really makes a person sad. I mean, if Ghana were your company or your family, I don't think that anybody would treat the country the way they are doing.
Now, we are speaking to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, NDC's 2020 candidate. We've been on a tour of the Volta and OT regions. We are wrapping up today, and TVXYZ Ways TV on Facebook and YouTube are privileged to be having this interview with him. And this program is also live on Power Gateway FM here in Nkwanta, and then several, I'm told, Kingdom FM here in Nkwanta is also picking it live. Ago TV is also picking it up, and then Volta One TV is also picking up. Now, these conversations we are having on infrastructure, delayed projects, cost to the nation and so on, dovetails into some policy statements focusing on economic stimulus package for small businesses. You made mention of when you spoke at the whole technical university. I want us to listen to excerpts of what you told the professional bodies, the traditional authorities and groups you met, and then we can continue some conversation on this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we in the NDC acknowledge that every Ghanaian, like you sitting here this afternoon, our professional, drivers, farmers, market women, laborers, and all others, contribute directly or indirectly in the process of development and revenue generation through the taxes that we pay. With that acknowledgement and the expected impact of COVID-19, the fiscal policy of NDC in 2021 will ensure that taxes are fair, equitable, and favorable, and that public expenditure is aligned to the critical felt needs of Ghanaians. Today, many small and medium enterprises are unable to survive because of the harsh economic conditions, the mismanagement of the economy by the NPP administration, and the deliberate collapse of businesses, together with the adverse impact of COVID-19, will force many businesses to lay off most of their workers and at worst fold up. Beginning in 2021 and into the medium term, the NDC government will offer several tax reliefs to the private sector, especially the small and medium enterprises, to enable them recover and get back to their full operating capacities. We will ensure that these firms leverage on these tax reliefs to expand the scope of their production and thereby employ more Ghanaian youth. Within the first 3 months of 2021, by the will of Mauli Shobolisa, by the grace of the Almighty God, I will lay several bills before Parliament that will seek to grant tax reliefs to small and medium enterprises. Ahead of our manifesto launch, let me lay out some of the incentives we'll be giving the business sector aimed at helping them consolidate and also provide more job opportunities. Effective 2021, small businesses will be exempted completely from corporate income tax. And that means all our small corner businesses, shops and others will be exempted from paying corporate income tax. Corporate income tax for medium-sized companies will be reduced from the current 25% to 15%. Newly established medium companies, medium-sized companies, that employ up to 20 staff will be completely exempt from payment of corporate income tax for 1 year. That 1 year will give them a breather to be able to consolidate the business before they start to pay tax. Newly established medium enterprises that employ more than 20 people will be exempted completely from the payment of corporate income taxes for 2 years, to give them sufficient time to consolidate the business. We will exempt commercial vehicles, industrial and agricultural machinery from import duties.
More of these when the NDC launches its 2020 manifesto, but obviously these stimulus packages may have to really reflect on the lives of the people. It can be jobs, it can be skills training, etc. Now, even though you have not launched your manifesto, those watching us are thirsty. Can you give us a hint about how really the impact is supposed to be felt?
Yeah. The drivers of this economy are the small and medium enterprises, not the huge, businesses. Now, they create most of the jobs, both in the informal and formal sector. After coronavirus, the collapse of the banks and all that, this sector is in very critical condition. Most businesses have collapsed. I mean, people's capital has eroded. Their capital is locked up with the banks. Cost of doing business has gone up. And so these segments of the economy are in distress. Now, one, they create the most of the jobs. Most of the young people are employed by these small and medium enterprises. What government does is it gives with one hand and takes from another hand. So if government says, I'm going to give a stimulus package, then you disburse a stimulus package, but at the same time, you're taking the taxes back from them. And the entrepreneur is best suited to know how he wants to invest his money. And so we're saying that, look, the best stimulus package you can give them is to relieve them from the tax burden so that they can reinvest that money in their businesses. So what we're proposing is that for businesses that have a turnover of up to 200,000, both incorporated businesses, that is businesses that are registered with the Registrar General, and the self-employed, those that are not registered, we will give them a break from taxes. It means they will not pay any taxes, you know, and we'll encourage that they reinvest the money that they have paid, they would have used to pay taxes, back into their businesses, so that one, the businesses can grow, and two, they can create more jobs. I think that this will create countless jobs. It will inject about, I'm not sure of the figure, we're still working on, but about 1.4, 1.5 billion every year back into these small and medium enterprises, because that's about the money that we get from the small taxpayers' office. And often the cost of collecting that money is even as high as the money that we collect, because that is the segment of the tax base that is the most difficult, you know, to get to comply. So that's it. Then the medium-sized businesses, up to about 2 million Ghana cedis. One, what we're offering them is that if it's a business that starts and employs up to 20 people, then they will not pay any tax for the first year, because that is the most critical stage of the establishment of a business. In the first year, that is when the entrepreneur is investing. And when he's not consolidated business yet, and you come and ask him to start paying taxes, it slows down the growth of the business. And so we say for the first year, they're exempt from taxes so that they can consolidate the business. And in the second year, you can come and say, pay these taxes. For those that employ more than 20, then what we'll do is we'll give them a 2-year tax break so that it gives them enough time to consolidate the business before they start to pay taxes. But we're also proposing to reduce the tax rate for medium enterprises. Currently, they pay 25% corporate income tax. And we are proposing that they pay 15%. One, it will improve compliance because it will bring down the tax rate and makes it easier for them to pay. This is the best stimulus package that you can give in order to create more jobs, in order to expand the indigenous Ghanaian economy. My proposal for a system shift is that we've been too focused on foreign direct investment. Yes, foreign direct investment is good, but investment by our own indigenous Ghanaian business people is even better, because it creates a better multiplier effect within the economy. And so I use a phrase that Colonel Achampong used when he said that the object of his government was to make Ghanaians capture the commanding heights of the economy. I think it's very relevant in this situation. We must use government's financial muscle and government's policy making to ensure that Ghanaian businesses grow, because it's when Ghanaian businesses grow that we can create jobs. It's when Ghanaian businesses grow that they can pay taxes for us to be able to do the development that is required. We will outline the details of this policy in the manifesto
just
launch.
Briefly, I know in the compilation of the manifesto you went round. That was when you christened it the listening tour. And many would wonder whether the ordinary people you engaged are going to buy readily into some of these policies, because sometimes it is good to announce it, but if they don't buy into it, implementation comes with difficulty, especially when you want the returns in terms of what you can also get from them as a government. Actually, it came out of the Speak Out tour. We engaged with small businesses, entrepreneurs, and all of them. And some of the complaints were about the high taxes. And often the Ghana Revenue Authority will come and lock up your business if you haven't paid tax. And what happens is that, you know, it's one, you know, stresses the business. People have to stay at home because the business has been closed down. And so it will relieve them of all that stress. And our hope is that the reinvestment they make from our not taking approximately 1.4, 1.5 billion
out of that segment will make them grow much faster. But the reactions we're getting already are very positive. I've got, calls and had discussions with people, and they are very happy that we're giving these tax breaks.
Now, you also announced your plan to legalize but regulate the Okada business. It has been well received across the country. I know this has been on the table for a long time. Just a few months ago, I was privileged to be invited by the Road Safety Commission and the Ministry of Roads and Highways to engage in a discussion, like consultative processes, to see what is the way forward. Can you explain further what is really influencing this new policy direction?
I think that a lot of our policymakers, look at job creation at a certain level. They don't realize the impact that some segments do in creating sustainable jobs. And like I said, whether we like it or not, that transport segment of boys riding, especially in the rural areas where people cannot afford to buy cars and run, regular transport services. It is the motorcycles that transport everything, goods, service, people.
A lot of MAHAMA can do.
And then this yellow MAHAMA can do, or Prajia, where depending on what you call it. This is a service that has come to stay. Whether you legalize it or not, you cannot stop it. And so why behave like the techie and bury your head in the sand? This Prajia and Okada and Aboboyas and things have created more jobs in this economy than any government job-related policy. It's created more jobs than NAPCO. It's created more jobs than YEA, all those artificial job creation programs. It has created more jobs than any of them. But these young people are living under harassment because it's illegal. And so the police harass them, they stop them from time to time, take money off them and all that. And so my suggestion is, why do we behave like the ostrich? Let us legalize it and let's regulate it and let's make it safer. Because one, the person must be trained on how to ride a motorcycle properly. He must have safety precautions. He must have 2 helmets to make sure that the passenger riding pillion
is equally protected.
Is equally protected, like the one riding in front. One, they must not overload the motorcycle, because sometimes you see that they have 3 or 4 people sitting on one motorcycle, And then 2, they must identify that this is a commercial motorcycle, so that we know that they're following the rules. And 3, and finally, they must obey all traffic regulations. I mean, you can't pick a passenger and get to a traffic light and it's red and you ride through the traffic light. Yes. If you are caught, your license will be taken from you. This will bring some discipline into the sector. So I say, let's legalize, let's regulate, because one, it's created sustainable jobs. People are earning an income out of this. And I mean, some people trivialize it and say, oh, he's thinking about Okada when you are thinking about something else. That is a reality. It is creating jobs, it's creating income for young people. And I think that legalizing and regulating it is the way to go.
Well, you are on TVXYZ, Wezo TV, Ago TV, and also on Gateway FM here at Nkwanta. My guest this morning is John Dramani Mahama, NDC's flag bearer for the 2020 elections. Now, sir, you arrived at Peve in the South Dai constituency. And I'm bringing this up because it is still related to policy, job creation, opportunities for the youth, and so on. You engaged a young man, a 27-year-old Joshua Setoji, whose dressmaking shop I saw you enter and interacted with him before you addressed the gathering. You made some specific comments about national apprenticeship program and so on. What was it, symbolic or coincidental?
It was coincidental. What had happened is we arrived at Peve, and
just to cut in, people watching us now can see you on TV engaging the gentleman, but you can continue with the conversation.
We arrived at Peve, and the event was held at the main lorry station. And so just when we were seated, I just noticed to the side that there was a string of businesses and shops, And I noticed this particular one because Setoji and his apprentices, you know, came to the front of the shop to look at what was happening. And so while they were observing, I also noted them. And I just thought about it and said, look, let me go see what this young man is doing. And so I left the program. Of course, the event went on, and then I went into the shop. And yes, Setoji was there. And I asked him, how is business? He says, oh, well, it could be better. It's slow, but he's doing well. I asked him, how many apprentices do you have? He has 15 of them. And I asked him where he went to school. And apparently he went to school at, I forget exactly which one, but I think it's Amfrega Technical or something, you know, one of these technical institutes. And contrary to the norm, you think that it's only women who engage in dressmaking. Setoji did dressmaking, qualified in dressmaking, and he came and established his business. And he is one of the main, you know, provider of, you know, shirts, trousers, dresses for women and men. He sews for both women and men. And he's one of the main dressmakers in the Peve area. And he's taking on 15 apprentices that he's training, you know, in dressmaking. And so when I spoke, I talked about the National Apprenticeship Program. Because one of the discussions I had with him was the fees that the apprentices pay. They have to pay a fee to be taken on and trained. And the major problem is that most of them are not able to afford the apprenticeship fees. And so under the National Apprenticeship Program, we will recruit these young people who do menial jobs, like the hawkers and all of them. Most of them, when you ask them, why are you hawking things? He says, well, I want to be able to raise some capital to go and pay my master for my apprenticeship. And so my thought is, why don't we relieve them of that? Let's identify the master craftspeople like Setoji. And what are the fees they pay? We will pay the fees to the master craftsperson and ask the children to go and do their apprenticeship. And when they finish the apprenticeship, once they reach the standard that is required, they can be given a certificate of completion and then help to set up, with a little capital, to set up their own businesses. This is the only way that we can change the face of this country. The government is not able to employ everybody in the public sector. And until we give an incentive to the private sector to expand and grow and employ people, we're not going to be able to create jobs.
Well, in my personal opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense, because if you look at technology and industry today, many industries may not be able to create opportunities for as many young people as possible because of the role the machines can play. And therefore, this particular thinking is obviously going to create the space for as many young people we saw on the streets. Now, you also stated that your next coming will focus on jobs, jobs, jobs. You made reference to the 1 million jobs in a 4-year period, 250,000 per year and so on. And then I think you tied this to the $10 billion big push project. Walk us through a little on some of these thinking or ideas that have come up.
You know, the thing is, with infrastructure, we've been tiddling with it, you know, little by little in all the various sectors, and we don't seem to be making much progress. Our roads are still bad. They are dangerous. People are dying on our roads. Many places do not have a modern healthcare facility. Many places do not have access to clean drinking water. A lot of communities that are waiting for electricity to be able to set up small businesses and all that. And we need more schools to be able to accommodate more children. And so our suggestion is, why don't we, over 5 years, put in a big investment, and that's why I call it the big push, to try to bring our infrastructure development to a certain level where it acts as an agent for economic transformation. It will do two things. One, it will improve our social and economic infrastructure, and you know the effect that improved social and economic infrastructure has on the growth of an economy. That one, we don't need to debate it. But secondly, in the course of putting in that infrastructure, we'll be creating jobs within the Ghanaian economy. But the significant thing about it is, as I said, these projects are going to be open to Ghanaian registered companies that pay taxes in Ghana. And so we're not going to give these projects to big foreign companies that will come and do it and repatriate all the money back to their countries. we have sufficient companies in Ghana that can construct roads. So for instance, if we say we're dualizing the Accra Cape Coast Road, and we divide that segment into 5 portions and give it to 5 Ghanaian contractors, they will create the second carriageway, and we will have 2 carriageways and create our dual carriageway. And so if we want to build more schools, and already that's what was happening, all the new E-blocks that we're building, impressive, structures, were being built by Ghanaian contractors. And so we will take this money, but we'll create a multiplier effect within the Ghanaian economy with it, because it will be paid to Ghanaian contractors who will pay to Ghanaian suppliers, and that money will circulate within our system. So that's what the big push is about. It will create jobs in the Ghanaian economy, but at the same time, it will lift up our social and economic infrastructure to a stage where it benefits our people, both in terms of educational facilities, in terms of access to clean drinking water, in terms of access to better roads to bring the agricultural products, to the market, in terms of healthcare, making our people better, CHIPS compounds, hospitals, polyclinics, in terms of schools, so that we can even ease the congestion, in our schools that has occasioned the double track. Because if we finish all those 200 schools and we even cite more in dense areas where there's a demand for secondary education, then we can spread the children out so that all children can go to school at the same time and vacate at the same time. And so this is the thinking behind the big push. So
this is live from the Gateway Hotel Gardens here at Nkoko. You are watching and listening to the NDC flag bearer, John Dramani Mahama. We will be taking a short break. When we come back, we'll hear President Mahama's reaction to the NPP's manifesto launch, and also read some of your messages. And you remember, it's already on social media. People are asking, was the manifesto launch about former President John Mahama, or really policies NPP intends to sell to Ghanaians? We'll be back shortly.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. Natural mineral water. Simply natural.
Welcome back. This is TVXYZ and Wezo TV on Facebook and YouTube. We told you this is also live on Kingdom FM here at Nkoko, Gateway FM here at Nkoko, Power FM in Accra, and several affiliates also listening to radio. It's also live on Ago. In Kwanta, let me also ask for some forgiveness for the slip. We are actually at Nkwanta, and FM, Kingdom FM is in Nkwanta, Gateway FM is in Nkwanta, Power FM is in Accra, Ago FM is in Accra, and then we also on Volta 1 TV in the Volta region, and this is TVXYZ on Wezo TV on Facebook and YouTube. Yesterday, when I monitored the presentation of NPP's manifesto, what came to mind was the challenge and the concern Ghanaians have raised generally, that they have borrowed so much. You talked about it severally during your tour of the Volta and OT regions, that they've borrowed 140 billion and there's very little or nothing to show. Why are you so passionate about how much they have borrowed?
That is because the huge debt becomes a youth tax, because a lot of these debts are not going to be paid by this generation. They're going to be paid by our children and our children's children. And so the young people must be concerned about the rate at which government borrows. The tragedy is that with the amount of money that the rate of borrowing and the amount of money that has been added to the public debt, one will expect that you would see a marked improvement. One, in terms of social and economic infrastructure, and two, in terms of economic prosperity. But that hasn't happened. People feel more economically disadvantaged today than they did in the past. people don't see any new development. We don't see the schools, we don't see the hospitals, we don't see extension of electricity. Indeed, this government has, over 4 years, has added only 1% to electricity access. Water access, we're in danger of falling back because small town water systems have broken down, they've not been repaired. So we achieved 76% access to water. I'm sure that that percentage is declining. So the question one asks is, what do they have to show for that huge amount of money borrowed? They borrowed 3 times more than I did in my time. And if you ask what was done with about 54 billion that was borrowed, I mean, you can see examples of it all over the place. We expanded the ports, we did the railways, we did roads, we built schools, we did hospitals, we extended water, we extended electricity, and people can physically see, you know, what that money was used for. Unfortunately, in this case, you don't see anything. I mean, in social economic infrastructure, you don't find anything. You know, normally when you speak to them, they say free SHS. But free SHS is not funded from borrowing. That's the mistake they make. Free SHS is funded from our share of the oil revenue. So it can't be the cost of 140 billion. What has happened is this government has borrowed for consumption. And that's the tragedy. When you borrow, you don't use it for consumption. You borrow in order that you can invest in the real sector and in capital development. And if you look at the investment in the real sector and capital development, compared with my time, there's been a decline. This government is struggling to do above 3%. We were doing almost 5%, 4.7% investment in the real sector, that is in capital. That is what propels an economy. Investment in productivity, you know, investment in infrastructure, that is what propels an economy.
When I come back, we will still look at the MPP and the manifesto launch, because yesterday I noticed that they were virtually silent on corruption issues. I want you to think about it, because our viewers are also trying to engage us in this conversation, and lots of text messages coming, and I have them before me. JM is coming back, no doubt. I'm watching live from Johannesburg. This is from Kwesi Apreku. Ghana needs to be to progress again. Please come back and rescue us. This one is from Kelvin Love from Ablekuma. What is your decision on the teacher and nursing trainee allowances and posting Fuseni from Wenchiki in Chiriponi, if that pronunciation is correct? Eric, I have no question for him, just to wish him Allah's blessings. Ibrahim Meya from Teshi Zongo. And then we have the change we are seeking is very simple. Peace, love for each other, and no tribalism, equally before the law. Jobs for the youth. This one is from Emmanuel in Accra. I promised our viewers I would want to take a little from your reaction. I noticed that when the MPP was launching its manifesto, we were on the road. And obviously, you wouldn't have had time to listen. And so I shouldn't be seen to be pushing you too much, to be speaking to issues you have not really digested. But what I have observed personally from my checks is that they were virtually silent on corruption issues. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised, because they actually have lost the fight against corruption. This president is not willing to fight corruption. And everybody knows that when you fight corruption, corruption fights back. And I mean, depending on who you are in his administration, I mean, you can do whatever you want and get away with it, because he will personally clear you and, you know, say that nothing untoward has happened. I mentioned the other day that there's a long list of cases of corruption, and yet he's not made anybody investigated. The Office of Special Prosecutor is his own baby, and yet he's tied the hands of the Special Prosecutor. We all know Mr. Amidu is a very vociferous lawyer, and I'm sure that if his hands were freed to really investigate these cases, he would have, you know, gotten some prosecutions by now. And my point is that when you fight corruption, you need to do it so that it becomes a deterrent, so that others do not engage in it. And so, obviously, they've lost the fight. I mean, look at what has happened to Domelevo. Domelevo is seen as a very energetic Auditor General who has taken on, you know, quite some high-profile issues. It is a constitutional body, and it's supposed to be independent of government in order that the occupant can do his job properly. Unfortunately, this president, who's a lawyer, and must know the Constitution better than I, has asked the Auditor General to go on leave. It is the same as asking the EC Commissioner to go on leave or asking the Chief Justice to go on leave. That's the import of what he has done. And why has he done it? Just because Domelevo was investigating a person close to him, the senior minister, on the Kroll Associates matter. And it was time to go back to the court. So we noticed that he has accumulated leave, so let him go. And then he goes on leave and they change the locks in his office. I mean, when you go on leave and they change the locks in your office, it means there's no intention that you're coming back. So obviously, this government has lost the fight against corruption. Our people are tired of corruption. It demotivates them. And they want that a leader who is in office should not only investigate former appointees, but also investigate people who engage in corruption in his era.
And sorry to cut in, because this particular issue makes me want to bring up for this conversation PDS, for example. Just 2 weeks ago, it has been in the public domain. I saw a post on social media suggesting that 1 year on, even when people are expecting to hear the president expose those involved in those fraudulent deals, there's some quietness. The Ejapa issue, the Ejapa Royalties Limited controversy in Parliament, you mentioned it on your tour. Would you specifically identify these among others and go into them? Because it's dear to the hearts of Ghanaians.
Yes, we'll investigate PDS. If I become president, we'll investigate PDS. Especially when it's obvious that persons very close to the president, related to the president, were involved in structuring the PDS deal. And we've heard audio of them in telephone conversations, talking about the shareholding and all that. We've all heard it. I mean, so there's enough evidence to investigate PDS. And the people of Ghana need to know what happened, because this was a situation in which the assets of a state-owned company were being handed over to a private company. As I speak today, for the period that PDS collected money when they were running the ECG, that money that runs in billions of Ghana cedis has not been accounted for. I mean, people cannot just pocket state monies and just walk away free with it. The people of Ghana deserve to know what happened in PDS. Ejapa is unfolding the same thing. The money laundering laws do not allow us, even as individuals, to hide our money in tax havens. So if even as individuals we're not allowed to hide our money in tax havens, why will government of Ghana mortgage our gold royalties to a private company in which we have 51% shares? Some shady individuals we don't know have taken 49% shares. On what basis did they take those shares? And they've gone to register in Jersey, an offshore tax haven, so that they hide the identity of the shareholders. Government of Ghana, even though the royalties are ours, cannot control that company. Meanwhile, we have vehicles we can use here. We have the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. If you assigned the royalties, our gold royalties, to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, which is a 100% controlled Ghanaian entity, it can do exactly the same thing that you want Ejapa to do. Ejapa is a very shady deal, and I'm saying if I become president, I will not respect that agreement. It is a theft of Ghanaians, royalties, and it is made to benefit just a few people. Ghanaians cannot accept this. We won't accept that agreement. We do not accept that government of Ghana should invest our royalties in an offshore tax haven. Let them invest it in a company that is transparent. We can see the beneficial owners of who the company are, and in the best case scenario, use a government of Ghana vehicle. Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund is supposed to be our sovereign wealth fund. If you assign our gold royalties to it, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund can raise those same monies that you want. In any case, we get almost $200 million a year. You want to go and borrow 500 million and tie our gold royalties for 15 years to a company that we don't know who owns the company, and in a tax haven. It's against the money laundering rules, and the president and his cohorts should not be doing this kind of thing.
That's really an interesting issue, very strong, and I believe that traditional authorities, civil society organizations, and Ghanaians in general should be interested in this. If
you even look at those who put the transaction together, there are people close to the president. Already almost $2 million have been paid to them on this transaction alone. There's something about, ethics, and it looks like there's a certain impunity that has developed, and this president and his family and those around him think they can do anything and get away with it.
Well, in your speech at WHO, for example, you said, and I quote, "To create sustainable development and prosperity, we must build a robust social and economic infrastructure, one that supports creativity, innovation, and the production of high value-added products and services." How are you going to achieve that?
Well, I tried to explain before that the process of investing in social and economic infrastructure creates jobs by itself, and sustainable jobs at that. Because if we put Ghanaian businesses to work, especially let's say in the big push, they're going to buy goods and supplies from local suppliers, like cement distributors. They'll buy from cement distributors. They'll buy iron rods. They'll buy fuel from Ghanaian filling stations. They will employ Ghanaians to drive dump trucks, operate excavators and bulldozers and all that. And so that process will lead to job creation. Civil engineers, architects will all be employed, so it will create jobs. But aside from that, raising our infrastructure level to a certain platform will be the basis on which we can increase economic acceleration. Because we cannot accelerate our economy when you have to bring agricultural products down this Eastern Corridor Road. We traveled on it yesterday. You see how it is?
I did.
I mean, if that road was well done, a truck can leave Damanko in the morning, and by 2 p.m. it will be in Accra. One, they'll charge the farmers less for transporting the products because their trucks will not break down on the way. And so economic infrastructure is a driver, and it propels economic prosperity. And that's why I have always believed in doing infrastructure. But I'm saying that at the same time, everything else we do must be geared towards creating jobs for young people. And that is why in a next administration that I had, every investment is going to be geared towards creating more jobs in the creative arts. I mean, can you imagine how many people can be employed in creative arts as film directors, as soundsmen and all that? Nigeria has managed to get it right. And how Nigeria was able to do it, we can follow the same path and move our creative arts to the next level. I've suggested that we turn NAFTI, the National Film and Television Institute, into modern multimedia university that will train sounds people, lights people, musicians, and all of them, and create the conducive environment, create theaters, so that when a film producer has produced his film, he doesn't have to go and share the proceeds 50-50 with a private film theater. He will have a government theater that will take like 25%. He takes 75% of the proceeds, because the more money the filmmaker makes, he will re-inject it into his next project. So there are a lot of, ideas that we have.
I can imagine how
creating studios, where they can use the studios for a subsidized fee to create their music, create their, productions. Government should create a platform for young producers to come and showcase what they've been able to do. How much will it cost to give them the National Theatre, have an Accra Film Festival, collaborate with the private sector, do an Accra Film Festival. Government can give prizes to the best movie, or have Accra, there are people doing Accra Fashion Week, help them. Let all the fashion designers come and showcase the new models. People will come from Nigeria and things to attend. They'll bring money and they'll stay in hotels. We need to unleash our creative juices, and I feel very passionate about it.
Well, so let me stop you here, because obviously the details will be in the manifesto when it's launched. Now, we spoke to an assemblyman. The reason why I deliberately wanted us to listen to this particular interview was that it was in one of the communities we visited, and this a man I chanced on, and in the conversation he tells me he's an assemblyman. He buys into the idea of saying you will pay them, and challenged even those who are the doubting Thomases. Let's listen. When we finish, we'll speak briefly to that and move on to other issues.
We've been here for more than 4 hours.
4 hours?
As early as 2 p.m. And we're waiting. Our hope is that our father is coming. We know the differences between the former and now. That is why we were so aggressive, waiting patiently to make sure, so that even if it is 12 p.m., that he will come to our way. We will wait and receive him.
Now, so he has come, but when we saw the excitement out there, you are a bit old.
Yes.
Looks like many young people are so much actively looking at how politics perhaps will change tomorrow.
Yes. The point is that, like I have already said, the differences are very clear. The young ones are looking for jobs, and this man, JM, started a lot. And his plan was that the target is for the youth. So that is why the youth are so much aggressive, waiting that his next coming will see the youth receiving whatever they wanted. And of course, there's something I want to tell you. Voter origin was a region of peace. When this registration exercise started, we saw a lot of strangers intimidating and harassing us. The creation of authority has rendered the Starlink to the 4 traditional areas, which used to be part of the whole constituency. We, the assemblymen, I am assemblyman from Atafu electoral area. We don't have an assembly we belong to. We don't know where we are reporting. What is wrong? Is it a divide and rule that they are applying? What is wrong? Are we not Ghanaians? Why? Why is it that they want to divide us upon our tribal lines?
Well, so you could see that the assembly member was very passionate, and as I said, he said a lot, and he bought into your idea of planning to pay them when you take over the reins of governance from January 7. Briefly, any comment on this? So we don't have much time to wrap up this conversation.
Right now, assemblymen members, they get a stipend. It's a sitting allowance, actually. So when they go and sit, they give them a little something for TNT. Now, these assembly members, if you look at the responsibility that they bear in their electoral areas, it is unfortunate that we don't motivate them by letting them be able to earn something so that they're able to discharge the responsibilities, in a much better manner than they do currently. I call the assembly members, there's something I say about the assembly members, and it's about a knock on the door. Anything that happens in the electoral area, the first door they go and knock is the assembly member's door. If a woman is giving birth and she has delayed labor and she needs to be evacuated, the first place they go is to knock on the assembly member's door and wake him up at 2 a.m. to mobilize transport to get the woman to the hospital. If anything happens in the community, the assembly member is the first point of call. And so the point is, why don't we let them also earn something so that they are able to discharge their duties better? And my suggestion is that it's not a salary. It is a stipend for carrying out a duty. In many countries, what they do is to create a system for gathering births and death certificates. We don't know who has died. And so we have a births and deaths registry, but nobody goes to report their deaths there. And so they're not able to capture who has died and who's alive. When a child is born, until the child grows and needs a birth certificate, he hardly goes to the births and deaths registry. So the births and deaths registry, the first time they interface with that child that was born 18 or 20 years ago is when the child comes and needs a birth certificate to go and do a passport. So we have what we call the village notebook. Now, it's not a notebook that you write in. It's an electronic device that has an app on it. And everybody within the electoral area, when you have a child, you have to go to the local assemblyman, enter the name of the child, the father's name, date of birth, where the child was born, and all that kind of thing. And once he's entered it and he presses send, it will upload it digitally on the local births and deaths registry. And so they will have that statistic that a child was born on this date called Eric Ahianyo. He was born to Mr. and Mrs. Ahianyo. And this child is a male, and all the other things that we get on our birth certificate. Now, we can use that as statistics to be able to estimate how many children are ready for kindergarten, because we will know how many children were born in all our electoral areas.
So it is beyond taking statistics of those who are born or those who die.
It includes taking statistics of those who are born and those who die. And so we'll pass the appropriate legislation that makes it mandatory that if you have a child, you must register it with your local assemblyman. If a person is dead, when you do the birth certificate. In many cases, they don't even go for a birth certificate. The person dies. In some of our communities, they bury the person the same day. But the assembly member will know that this person has died, and he will gather the statistics. So it will bring us up to date with our births and deaths, statistics. And for that purpose, we will pay them a little allowance. I'm sure that we can do it. If we reduce the size of government, I mean, look at the many ministers we have. You have to give them vehicles, you have to give them accommodation, you pay free light, free water, free telecommunications, and other allowances and privileges that you give them. If we sacrifice at that level and transfer those monies to the local level, it will give us a better service than having 125 ministers running all over the place and really doing nothing.
Well, unfortunately, we have to bring this conversation to an end. But you have made many people rediscover themselves. Can they remain confident that should you become the president tomorrow, you will deliver on your promises? I want you to capture this in your message to Ghanaians this morning.
In all my politics, one of the things I've tried to stand by is the truth, and not to overly raise the expectations of people, but to say exactly what vision I have and how we can achieve it. And the thing about me is I'm a realist. One of my disappointments, especially with the Nana Addo administration, is that they have shaken the belief of our people in our democratic system, because they've created the impression that for politics, the end is just to gain power. And so just say whatever you think the people want to hear and get political power for yourself. And once you get it, I mean, whether you deliver or you don't deliver, you don't really care. But what it does is that it diminishes the faith our people have in the democratic system. So you notice that until recently, a lot of people, if you ask them, even most of the opinion polls that have been done, if you look at it comparatively from Rawlings, Kufuor, Atta Mills, my time, the number of people who said don't vote was minimal. Since Akufo-Addo came into office, the number of people who say don't vote has risen because they believe that politicians are taking them for a ride. And so they extend it to the whole political class, but they don't realize that it is a particular administration that made promises that they knew they couldn't achieve. When they were making those promises, I said these promises, knowing the state of the economy, they are not immediately achievable. We can build up gradually, to be able to attain that level, but we haven't reached there yet. I mean, if you say one district, one factory, 260 factories, how are you going to build them? Have you taken into consideration the value chain? And that's why we are coming up with what we call the staple crop processing zones. And so we look at a zone. Brong-Ahafo is leading in cashew production. And so how many units of cashew processing plants should we put there to be able to take advantage of the cashew value chain? You go to Kwewu and some parts, they are good in ginger. You put a ginger processing factory there to do dry ginger powder, ginger oil, and so on and so forth. You go to other places, watermelon. It might not be a district. It might be a group of adjoining districts that will benefit from some processing. But my thinking is not to build big factories. It is to put small processing plants in the hands of the farmers. And so if you go to a palm oil place, instead of building a huge palm oil factory, give them small palm oil expellers that is able to extract mechanically the palm oil for them and make their job easier so that they're able to process, label properly their products and take it to the market. And at the same time, look at the production value chain. Give the farmers the equipment that increases their productivity. Right now, the young people are not interested in agriculture because who wants to go and bend down with a hoe and cutlass the whole day? Nobody wants to do that. But there are equipment now that you can get from India and all across the world that make work easier for farmers. And if they're able to increase their productivity, give them the processing so that they're able to process their product. So agribusiness is going to be a major focus for us. So young people who want to go into agribusiness will be encouraged to do so. Those who want to go into agriculture, we'll give them the option of scientific agriculture. We did the Dawenia project that the president commissioned recently, the greenhouses. That is because we wanted to bring scientific production to young people. Young people will be attracted to growing vegetables and other things in greenhouses. And so we did a 74, and it was supposed to be used both to produce and to train. And as we train them, we will establish more greenhouses in the various regions so that young people too can find agriculture interesting. These are all ideas that we conceptualize we didn't complete, but at least the greenhouses are being put to use now. And when we come, we'll continue with that vision that we had.
So we have been listening to former President John Dramani Mahama, who is NDC's 2020 flag bearer. Thanks so much to all those who joined us by sharing this live conversation. Gateway FM here at Nkwanta. We have Kingdom FM in Nkwanta, Power FM in Accra, Volta 1 TV, we have Ago TV. Several of them I may not be able to remember immediately, but if you pick that live, we are so grateful. John Mahama's social media handles, Wezo TV on Facebook and YouTube and TV XYZ. I am Erica Hianyo, and thanks to all the technical team here with us at Nkwanta and those outside this region. See you again when John Mahama is on the move, and Wezo TV and TV XYZ will bring you what happens.
Asampa etia obayansa fusu wo bunye wonka na asam ze mafutu sam kakre wa asupeme yo kofi o my